This is CBC Saturday News.
Good evening, I'm Makda Gebrselassie. Well, the war of words continues between the City of Toronto and the province. This time, Mayor John Tory targeted each of the Conservative MPPs in Toronto with letters laying out the consequences of recent childcare cuts to their riding. And as the letters fly back and forth from all sides, the question remains, how effective are they? Ramna Shahzad has more.
11 letters to 11 Toronto MPPs with a clear message: reverse the cuts in childcare funding. Mayor John Tory fired off the letters yesterday to each MPP's office, outlining how the cuts impact their specific riding.
Well, you do everything you can. I mean, and I want the public to become engaged in this too. I want the public to call the very same MPPs they elected and say, look, I elected you. I thought you were a good person. I wanted to make a change because in many cases the PCs won because of that. But I did not elect you to cut child care or to cut public health or to cut student nutrition. So I think that that's what I hope this will help to accomplish.
So how have the letters been received? MPP Stan Cho says he'd prefer face-to-face dialogue.
Well, you know, everybody's entitled to write as many letters as they like. I think the more productive way would be to maybe just sit down at a table and speak things through, because I think we're in this together and we really have to fix the problems we have in our city and our province collectively.
The city says the tension with Queen's Park began with the release of the province's budget, which sparked this recent spat of letters. On April 29th, Mayor John Tory sent this letter to Premier Doug Ford about the province's proposed cuts to Toronto public health. The mayor says his city is being singled out and that over the next 10 years, those cuts would amount to $10 billion. The next day, Premier Ford responded with this letter, saying the cuts won't cost the city anywhere near that number, and when it comes to the City of Toronto's budget, there's room for efficiencies. Amanda Galbraith has worked for Mayor Tory's office and says this isn't his usual style.
I think they would like to be kind of into more business-like talk. That's more in the mayor's nature. But at this point, both sides feel like they really can't get there. I think at the end of the day, it'll probably come down to a conversation between the mayor and the premier and less of flying letters back and forth. But it certainly makes for some interesting political theater for the rest of us.
In his letter to the MPPs, Mayor Tory says he's made repeated attempts to have city officials sit down with the province to find a different solution, and that offer still stands. The Toronto MPP sent out a joint statement Thursday saying they're cleaning up, quote, an inherited fiscal mess and wanting to work with the city to clean up, quote, waste at City Hall. Ramna Shahzad, CBC News, Toronto.
A plan to keep commuters connected while on the TTC enters the next phase this month. Wi-Fi on parts of Line 1 of the subway will give riders the opportunity to make calls, use data while they're underground. But there's a catch. Only one cell phone provider has jumped on board. Philip Lishanak explains why.
For many Toronto business people, traveling by subway is time that could be better spent.
Having connectivity down there would be amazing, yeah. Yeah, definitely. Because, I mean, then you get a lot more work done.
I know in other countries, I think in the underground in the UK, I'm pretty sure you have Wi-Fi throughout, so why not here?
Of course, a lot of people need to be connected a lot of the time when they're dealing with important stuff.
Connectivity has improved. There's now Wi-Fi in stations and cell service on the new extension up to Vaughan. But most of the subway is still a dead zone.
In 2019, it's very difficult not to be able to access information when you need it on demand as we're used to it.
That's about to change as BAI finishes installing antennas along the tunnel walls south of Bloor. This month, cellular service will be coming, which should have value for people who work in the financial district.
For sure, there's thousands and thousands of people losing perhaps up to a half hour or more a day of productivity, so it's going to be in the many, many millions, maybe hundreds of millions of dollars.
The same company that brought Wi-Fi to subway stations won the bid to provide the service, but BAI is finding that in Toronto, the big cell phone companies, Bell, Rogers and Telus, are hesitant to sign on.
To date, unlike our New York office where we have Verizon, AT&T, Sprint and T-Mobile, here in Toronto, it's Freedom Mobile has taken us up on the offer.
Telus didn't respond to our request for comment, but Bell and Rogers did send a statement saying that they would love to offer their customers service down in the subway. but they haven't been allowed access to install their own equipment.
If I was an operator, I can understand wanting to own my own infrastructure. However, all 4 of them can't build their own separate infrastructure.
The TTC says the contract with BAI provides it with millions in revenue for transit and urges these cell phone companies to provide their customers with the service they want. Philip Shannock, CBC News, Toronto.
There's a setback this weekend for tired homeowners along sections of the Ottawa River. Rain, along with snowmelt, has floodwaters rising again. And as David Thurton explains, many communities are declaring states of emergency.
This used to be an abandoned railway line, and it's the only thing that is separating the Ottawa River. If you can believe, this used to be a park, but it's now part of the river, from the lower downtown site here in Pembroke. As you can see, the water is creeping its way up downtown. We spoke with the mayor of Pembroke, and here's what he had to say.
So the homeowners have all been contacted, and the sandbagging is going on now, so everybody should be fine. So we've not had to worry about evacuations.
Both the military and the Ontario Ministry of Natural Resources have pitched in to help residents here. The residents along the water tell us that they've never seen levels this high.
It's mainly property and shed damage, but from a house perspective, we've been a lot luckier than the neighbors per se, so we're going to help the neighbors out.
Of course, Pembroke isn't the only community that's been affected by these floods. Communities up and down the Ottawa River are hoping to turn a page this weekend and begin what is surely expected to be a long and painful cleanup. David Thurton, CBC News, Pembroke, Ontario.
Further up the Ottawa River in the community of Mattawa, east of North Bay, the town is also under a state of emergency tonight. City officials have ordered the evacuation of residents who live along the Mattawa River. The only bridge that connects the 2 sides of the town has been shut down. Water levels are expected to peak tomorrow. Family and friends held a funeral today for the woman who died as a result of the flooding in Pontiac.
First, it was when I met her through addictions and recovery. Well, the first thing she did was give me a hug. She didn't know who I was, and it was a mother's hug. I dubbed her from that point as my street mom, as many did, and I called her Mama, you know, and she really liked that. It was a relationship. It was love. That's what this woman was.
Louise Segan-Lortie was driving alone 3 weeks ago when the road she was on was washed away by rushing waters. The car was swept away, killing Lortie. She was 72 years old. Sophia Kambalia joins me now with a look at the weather. So, Sophia, as you saw there, parts of the province are in need of some relief. Will they get it?
Yeah, well, unfortunately not in the short term, and I'll explain why. It had a lot has to do not only with the rain that we got to end off the work week, but also with the backlogged northern watersheds. As you heard there, the peak of some of the rivers has really just stayed constant. It's because the northern watershed is so backlogged, it actually can't hold back the rain like it was earlier in the spring. On top of it, we had all the rain to end off the work week, and it's why we are seeing levels not even really seen in the last 60 years, and that peak is really remaining constant. For those of you in the nation's capital region waiting at bated breath, there is more rain in the forecast, especially throughout the day Monday. It will be consistent but light. Heavy rain into the GTA late Sunday into Monday. We are also watching closely a really brisk east wind. With high water levels on Lake Ontario, we have the potential to even see some flooding on the western edge of the lake. It will be wet as well for mothers. If you got some flowers for Mother's Day, they will get a good watering. Sunday into Monday, showers push in late Saturday into Sunday, very light and pop up in nature. Then the heavier rain moves in Monday, easing late day Monday, but temperatures with this brisk east wind will keep things 5 to even 10 degrees below seasonal. So not the sunshine, rainbows, Mother Day forecast that we all want, but you should be able to eke out a mostly dry day for Sunday.
All right, thanks for that.
You're welcome.
Police are hunting for 3 suspects after a drive-by shooting that ended in a 3-way crash. One man was seriously injured and remains in hospital tonight. Kelda Ewan is in the Danforth and Chester area where it all happened. So, Kelda, where it ended is not where this all began.
That's right, Mac. The shooting and the crash happened at two different spots. Where I am right now on Danforth near Chester is where the crash happened. Everything is back to normal now, but this area was closed for about 6 hours earlier. Police were called here at around 10 o'clock last night. When they arrived, they found 3 cars involved in a crash. In one of the vehicles, they found a man shot once in the upper body. Now, the shooting, police say, actually happened over a kilometer away near Castle Frank subway station. Police say 2 vehicles were traveling eastbound on Bloor when a person in one of the vehicles opened fire on the driver of the other one. Both vehicles continued traveling and collided with a 3rd vehicle near Chester Ave. Witnesses told police they saw 3 men fleeing on foot. There are many restaurants and businesses in this area, so police say they are hoping for surveillance video. They are also appealing to witnesses.
The incident, as I mentioned, started from Castle Frank all the way to Chester. So, we believe that there are people who were in the area. This is 10 o'clock at night who may have at least witnessed something.
Last night's shooting happened close to where the Danforth shooting happened last July. And I spoke to those who live in the area about and asked them how they felt in the aftermath of yet another shooting in their neighborhood.
You can choose where you live, but you can't choose where the shooting's going to occur. You just don't know. It's random.
As a kid, I'd walk down here all the time, always felt 100% safe, like nothing was going to happen. And now all these things are starting to happen, and it's unsettling.
We could be doing more with gun control. We could be doing more to ensure that our communities are safe.
Generally, the sentiment seems to be that this kind of thing could happen anywhere. Meanwhile, police are continuing to investigate. They have not released any suspect details. Back to you.
Thanks, Kelda. Well, this Mother's Day weekend, a pair of Ontario mothers are launching a program that takes aim at gun violence in Brampton. They're trying to do something the city considered but ultimately decided not to do: give people a financial incentive to surrender their firearms. Brenda Redekop has the story.
So is this the first one? Let's go.
They're armed with posters, trying to convince people in the city of Brampton to get rid of their unwanted firearms and ammunition.
We were wondering if it's okay if we could put up a sign in your window.
Absolutely, it's for a good cause. They started their own nonprofit organization. They'll give a $100 gift card to anyone who takes part in the gun amnesty this month by the local police force. They never expected to do something like this.
It happened really fast. So it's kind of like I was turbocharged in a moment. I had seen that another mother had lost her child. It's Mother's Day rolling around, and it inspired me.
Just over a month ago, Brampton City Council turned down a motion for it to provide money in exchange for guns. Instead, the gun amnesty is going on without any extra incentives in a region that reports close to 16,000 restricted firearms. Toronto Police launched their own gun buyback program. So far, they've collected more than 1,300, a third of those handguns. Those gun owners receive $350. For long guns, it's $200. This is the Brampton councillor who suggested her city do the same.
It's amazing, and I'm so impressed with Torontonians right now, but it just speaks to what I've been saying for a long time. Incentives work.
Gun amnesties do happen in other cities, but less common is offering money in exchange. In Toronto, they used to offer a camera to shoot pictures instead of a firearm. These women know it's unlikely criminals will be turning over the firearms, something one criminal lawyer backs up, with guns worth much more than these incentives on the black market.
Whether it's a suicide, accidental shooting, who knows? That's still one more child missing on Mother's Day.
Their aim is to pay in exchange for 50 guns, though they still have to raise more money. Lorenda Redekop, CBC News, Brampton.
She was just 5 years old when she died, but she left a lasting impression on the city. We'll take you to this year's Megan's Walk after the break. Sri Lanka's capital was the scene of a special memorial mass today for the victims of the Easter Sunday bombings. The Archbishop of Colombo presided. Survivors and victims' families were among those attending. This mass also offered an opportunity to distribute financial aid to them. Churches are now preparing to resume services. They've been canceled out of fear of new attacks. It's the 18th year for a Toronto tradition built around the life and loss of a 5-year-old girl who suffered from brain cancer. Hundreds of people marched through the city for Megan's walk and hug. We caught up with the families and survivors who got out and took to the streets to raise money for a good cause.
I was diagnosed with a brain tumor when I was 10 years old. I went through multiple surgeries and multiple rounds of chemo. I would not be here without Sick Kids. My first year walking in Megan's Walk was actually only a few weeks after my major brain surgery. I was actually in a wheelchair, and it was just an amazing experience because that was my first time seeing that, you know, I wasn't alone in this journey and that there was other kids like me and there was other people, this whole community supporting kids like me.
You know, Megan's Walk's not just about kids that are sick with brain tumors. Megan's Walk's a testament to the power of our human spirit and what we can do when we stand together united in love and hope for all children.
The Venice Art Biennale has been described as the Olympics of the art world, and the group representing Canada are first-timers. Yelena Adzik explains.
You're about to see a work of art that speaks volumes about Canadian history and the treatment of Inuit people. It's a film installation, and it represents the first time in the history of the Venice Biennale that Canada is showcasing Inuit artists. The lead creator is Zacharias Kunik, the director of the 2001 epic film Atanarjuat, The Fast Runner. Now, his latest film, showing at Venice, is called One Day in the Life of Noah Pigatuk. The story is a recreation of a real-life encounter on Baffin Island in April of 1961, when Noah Pigatuk's Inuit family was ordered to move off the land by a white man simply known as Boss. So as you witness this reenactment of their first greeting, keep in mind that what resulted from this handshake is the removal of Inuit people from their land so that the Canadian government could more easily secure future mining and mineral rights in the Arctic. It's a meeting loaded with meaning.
What just happened? He says, not too hard. Yeah. Okay.
That subtle indication of the forceful treatment to come is at the heart of the Inuit exhibit repping Canada in Venice. Now, it's not just a film, it's also a real-life live feed of video from the exact same location of that fateful meeting 58 years ago. But today, Biennale visitors and all of us online can watch the film crew setting up and conducting interviews with community elders about what is being lost in terms of land, language, and animal wildlife. And this is all happening in the midst of a multinational mining company making plans for a railroad and super tanker shipping past today's Inuit communities of Igloolik and Pond Inlet. This is a form of art that incorporates activism, and it requires a lot of thought on the part of the viewer. But like all compelling art, it's also visually arresting. That's what has the art world transfixed this weekend as they take in the Inuit art representing Canada at the Venice Biennale. Yelena Adzik, CBC News, Toronto.
Well, today I did some road work and I chopped some wood and I worked out in the gym. I punched the bags.
Fans screamed George Chevallo's name for decades. Now that name is being used to inspire generations to come. We'll tell you how after the break. A new community center now bears the name of a Canadian boxing legend. The George Chavallo Community Center opened its doors in the Junction today. Chavallo grew up in the Junction in the 30s, and he is one of Canada's most decorated boxers, famous for his 2 fights against Muhammad Ali. The community center is a 7,000 square foot space run by the Christie Ossington Neighborhood Center. They're aiming to have the center open for 70 hours per week. Well, it all comes down to one game. The Raptors face the Philadelphia 76ers in a do-or-die Game 7 tomorrow. And the players are feeling the pressure.
Game 7s are what you play for, what you work for. You know, it's one of the best games of your career and kind of the playoffs. You get to a Game 7, so we know how hard it's going to be. I think a lot of this game is all about playing hard as you can. You know what I mean? Just leave it all out there. Like I said, like you really have to. I mean, win or go home.
After a disappointing Game 6, the team is going into Sunday's Game 7 with an advantage. The team gets to play in front of a hometown crowd right here in Toronto, and if they win, they'll move on to the Eastern Conference Finals against the Milwaukee Bucks. So for the fans that will be watching out in Jurassic Park, Safia, can they count on staying warm and dry?
Well, if they are coming out in droves, they should expect temperatures that are hovering just above the freezing mark with the wind. Really about 5 degrees below seasonal, feeling much colder with the wind. Luckily, you are pretty sheltered from that wind within Jurassic Park, but make sure to bring a hood because the showers could pop up. They will be light in nature. We could even see a little bit this evening, especially if you're in southwestern Ontario. We're kind of at the northern edge, if we head to satellite and radar, of the cloud deck of this incoming system. It really stays stagnant throughout Mother's Day weekend. Here's why. Blocking high pressure, remember, high pressure circulates clockwise, which is why we're also getting the colder northerly flow around it. We should be able to eke out a mostly clear day, especially as we head into Mother's Day brunch timing. It's later in the day Sunday when the showers push in, get a bit heavier maybe into the overnight period with a really brisk east wind, and then we have sort of a dreary, rainy, windy day into Monday. Those showers push up into eastern Ontario later day Monday into Tuesday. We really don't recover temperature-wise until midweek. I'll show you the long-range forecast in a minute. It's because of that high pressure bringing us this really brisk east wind in behind. Temperatures go down about 5 degrees Sunday, another 5 degrees for Monday, and we're kind of in temperatures more reminiscent of early May. Not the sunshine and rainbows, as I mentioned, that Mom wants to see, but mostly a dry day Sunday. Monday is your wet day, and then we're back up to seasonal for midweek, luckily. If you want consistent spring warmth, we're going to have to wait a little while longer.
All right. Thanks for that. Welcome. That's our show for tonight, but before you go, we will leave you with some views in High Park today. The cherry blossoms are in peak bloom in time for Mother's Day tomorrow. Could be a nice outing with Mom. Your next regional newscast is tomorrow at 11. See you then.